All right, the next philosopher here, John Locke, he is going to disagree with Thomas Hobbes. Most of y'all seem to disagree with Hobbes. He's influenced by the Glorious Revolution, right? This is following that English Civil War, right? Following the beheading of Charles the First of England, right? With the Glorious Revolution, right? England is going to get its Bill of Rights, which is going to protect its citizens' rights. Locke believed that people were born with natural rights, things like life, liberty, and property. These are things that every person naturally has the right to. And he argued that kings could be overthrown if they violate people's rights. I assume most of y'all would agree with Locke more than Hobbes, since you said no to Hobbes. Do y'all think people are born with natural rights, life, liberty, and property? Getting some no's to that one. Do y'all think a king should be overthrown if he's violating people's rights? Okay.
Answer for these questions. It honestly matters how you were raised in the environment.
Sure.
Same with the people being born violent individuals.
Without question. Right. Do you think Locke supported an absolute or a limited monarchy? Why? Doesn't believe monarchs should have full power, right? If they are violating people's rights, they should be able to be overthrown, right? That is a limited monarchy, right? Absolute monarchs, if they're violating people's rights, it doesn't matter, right? They have absolute power. There's nothing you can do, right? Locke believed in limited monarchy. So he supports this limited or this constitutional monarchy. The constitutional monarchy is the system that England has then and now, okay? He believes that government's power comes from the consent of the governed, right, or the approval of the people. I'll put your phones up. And he also believes that kings should protect the rights of the people. All right, so we're not going to do the actual writing portion of this. I just want y'all to throw your idea out there. But who do you support more, right? Looking at these ideas here, looking at Hobbes, he believes that people are naturally selfish and act out of self-interest. Without government control, society would be chaotic. People are like children and need a strong, quote, father to keep them in line. And then there's Locke. He believes that people are reasonable and are able to make decisions. Freedom and liberty are more important than order in society. And people should be able to overthrow kings who abuse power. What do y'all think?
I feel like they should level it out and use
Because I don't understand anything.
Feel like they should level it out?
Yeah.
Right? A little bit of both?
Yeah.
Right? The ones that I look at immediately are these two right here.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Whether people are reasonable or whether people are selfish, I mean, that just
Depends.
is what it is, depends, right? This one right here in the middle, comparing Hobbes to Locke. Without government control, society would be chaotic. And then freedom of liberty, right, or freedom and liberty are more important than order in society. In my opinion, right, there has to be some sort of level of government control, right? Or else society will be chaotic. We've talked about that in this classroom, right? There's, 20 of y'all in here, right? There's one of me, okay? If all of us were equal and we all had equal power and control, would we ever get anything done related to world history and y'all trying to learn in this class? No, right? Because y'all can do whatever you want. Y'all can get up and walk out, right? I just told a couple of y'all to get off your phones, right? Y'all could have, looked at me, rolled your eyes, thrown a paper ball at me, thrown your Chromebook at me, and then started scrolling through your phone again, right? If there was no structure or control, by the government, quote unquote, in this classroom being me. Okay, so there does have to be a level of control. So Hobbes is right here. Okay, but then Locke says that freedom and liberty are more important than order and society. Right? Well, if we have nothing but freedom and liberty and no order to society, right, or no safety, do your freedoms and liberties matter? Right? If there's just constant war and chaos and anarchy and the world's on fire, do you care that you have freedom at that point? Probably not, right? You want a little bit of both, right? We need some structure, but we also need some liberties and personal freedoms, okay? And then being able to overthrow kings who abuse power, right? Probably most people agree with that. But then people are like children. They need a strong father to keep them in line, right? Again, kind of goes to leadership more so, right? Somebody's got to be in charge, right? So, again, both ideas somewhere in the middle is probably the best way to go about things. Generally, it is. All right, continuing on here, looking at a French philosophe, Voltaire, one of the most famous writers during this era. We're going to see Voltaire argue for some certain rights, right? Freedom of speech being one, freedom of religion being the other, criticizes intolerance, prejudice, and oppression. Was actually thrown in jail twice for criticizing the French government and the monarchy in place there. All right, but was very influential. Right, again, very good writer. He would actually write letters to several different monarchs throughout Europe, right? England, Spain, Portugal, introducing these ideas of reforms and freedoms. Right? Trying to basically spread the word, right? There are other ways to go about this, right? Check out these other ideas on freedom of speech, freedom of religion, right? Maybe you can implement those or use those in your country as well. Right? Very influential. Looking at this idea of freedom of speech. All right, I'll start with this quote here. All right, I may disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it. Okay, that is a quote there from Voltaire. Do you agree with this quote? Do you disagree with this quote? Right? It's a question I'll ask you. Should freedom of speech ever be restricted? Those of you that want to participate, let's see a show of hands here. If you say yes, freedom of speech should be restricted. Again, this is ever. Right? Raise your hand. What about no? Right, we get a lot of no's. Right? Looks like every single person here raised their hand no. Okay. If you're on a plane, should you be able to yell bomb? Huh?
I mean, you could.
What about in a classroom?
Yeah.
Right? I'm going to blow the school up. Should you be able to say that? Okay. So, should freedom of speech ever be restricted?
Yes.
But should it ever be restricted?
No.
Huh? You just said yes. You just said I shouldn't be able to say that in the classroom.
Well, I said no.
Huh?
I don't think
Even our
it's
freedom
right
of
to
speech.
say
It's not right to say it, but like you can still say it. Like you have the right to
What's
say
the
it.
punishment for that?
Get ISS or something? Oh, what's this?
You're going to be expelled from the school is what's going to happen. What if you say that on a plane? You're going to get arrested. Right? You're going to spend time in prison for years.
Yeah, what is it?
Well, that's, I mean, if there is one, yeah, sure, we should probably report that, right? Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, even all freedom of speech isn't absolute.
All right. Freedom of speech is not absolute. Okay. Think about, like, as a teacher. Think about for me. Should my freedom of speech be restricted in the classroom as your teacher?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. I shouldn't be able to just come in here, right? Pick whatever political side I want, and then every single day tell you all the great things that my political party that I support is good and why this one's all bad. Right? Should I be able to do that? No, right? I've got to remain neutral, right? Tell you a little bit about this side of something, a little bit of this side, right? So you can form your own opinions. Okay? So my freedom of speech as a teacher, especially a history teacher, right? Social studies, right? This whole department, right? Our freedom of speech is restricted a little bit, right? Because I can't just pick what I want to basically influence you with, right? I've got to give you a little bit of both, right? For you to make your own decision, okay? So should freedom of speech ever be restricted? There are certain circumstances where it is best for freedom of speech to be restricted, right? My profession as a teacher, right, is one of those instances, I believe. You may disagree, which is fine. Again, I may disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to your death the right to say it, right? So there are instances, I think, where freedom of speech should be restricted, okay? But there's also times, most of the time, the majority of the time, where it's not, okay? And then violent stuff, obviously, right, should be restricted as well. Again, my opinion.